Hi, I'm Luis Rodriguez, and this is SEO in 2024.
Luis, what's your number one SEO tip for 2024?
Thank you, David. For this year, I would advise everyone to elevate the value of SEO by developing internal capabilities. So building an in-house team. I think that right now it's becoming a little bit more important given all the movements that are happening with generative AI, with all the new technology that is out there. I think that it's becoming a little bit more important than before.
An in-house team to replace your agency or to augment your agency?
I would say that it can be both. So first of all, I think that, for many large and established businesses, bringing the SEO function in-house makes just sense. I think that it's a difficult decision given the reliance on agency, the speed of delivery that they can have. But I believe that focusing on providing a good user experience, answering people's questions through content and driving them to the right page, I think that it's a multi-pronged function that encompasses many stakeholders, many data point platforms and data sources that for an in-house team, it would probably be slightly easier to achieve. Sometimes with outsourced teams or agencies, you can have a lot of different hurdles in terms of approvals, in terms of access to the actual data. And I believe that an in-house team can own the end-to-end SEO process by using own data, determining the strategies to create the content or the pages, analyzing the activity promptly. I think that now SEO is becoming a lot faster or more dynamic environment. And I think that it's important to measure everything at these stages of the launch of these projects.
So why is it important now? Why are you sharing this advice now? Is it because of, for instance, the evolvement of AI and the mass use of AI within the generation of content, and that's something that in-house teams need to take full control of?
I think that is also, that's partially one of the reasons. The other one is that it's also my own realization after several years working with both agencies and an in-house team. I'm starting to notice that the speed of delivery and the actual value that the company gets, especially on the long term, it's elevated when you have an in-house team. So every time that your team executes an SEO project, they will develop expertise in your industry, develop expertise within the company itself, which eventually will lead to efficiencies. That's not always the case with agencies. With agencies, there's always this run about who's actually in the background, who's handling the project themselves, and how to communicate and how to execute those projects. So I think that it becomes more relevant right now when there is so much automation going on with generative AI that, you don't even know if your agency is actually employing people or using just scalable solutions, which is valid, obviously. Nevertheless, when you're dealing with regulated businesses or when you're dealing with a international scope, I think that your team will be better prepared to actually tackle those challenges.
So one of the good reasons, I think, to use an agency is once you outsource what needs to be outsourced, then you're fairly confident that it's going to get done. What can happen in-house is you intend to do something and then something more important crops up and you have to focus on that instead. So what you intended to do isn't done. How do you ensure that everything is done as well in-house as if you use an agency?
Yeah, definitely. The paralysis of the analysis is one of the biggest risks that you suffer in SEO. When you're looking at so many data sources, there can be an update as it is right now. So it can become difficult. My advice to that part is to stick to your plan, stick to your goals. I think that is really important that even if it's a forecast or even if it's a guess, try to assign the value that you will be bringing to the company by executing certain tasks. I think that should help you out to stay true to your goal. Especially when there are updates, for example, and you see some tremors into your rankings, it can be very easy to go into panic mode and start changing all of your plans or your priorities. But I think that what truly matters is that you are confident on your planning and the performance of that plan. As you have internal sources, that you have all of your internal stakeholders, it's important that you are walking together with the rest of the company. And generally that doesn't get affected by, a change in algorithm or a change in priorities within the SEO team. So stick to your goals. Definitely make sure that your plan is considering what is the output and how do you plan to measure that output, that the output itself is recognized or it's familiar to the rest of the companies. That makes a lot of sense.
Is there anything in-house that's typically forgotten about? Because often when you get agency to do things, you sometimes don't even know precisely what they're doing on your behalf. And maybe you take things in-house and you think they're doing a fairly simple job, but you're not aware of some of the things that they're doing for you.
Definitely, transparency is it's one of the biggest things. So even an agency can be briefed about your company goals and the topic of your campaign. External people cannot be as connected as to the philosophy of the company as your team will be. So one of the risks would be, as we're saying, the lack of transparency. The things that can be easily missed when you're relying on an external parties, like how are competitors doing, and actually visiting your own website. That would be my two biggest flags in terms of what can be missed when you're relying entirely on an external agency.
Okay, and if you don't want to get rid of your agency completely, what tasks would you recommend leaving an agency with?
A hybrid model is definitely one of the approaches that I would also suggest. It also works out to bridge certain parts of the project. It helps you out to perhaps, solve certain kind of skill set that you're missing. So that's a really good pointer. What I would say that the areas that a hybrid model would be beneficial for an agency to handle would definitely be competitor monitoring. So as an agency will have multiple clients, they will have multiple visibility on different industries. It's important that you're fed with that part. So it's almost like having a fresh look, a creative refresher, and a different perspective on your own conclusions. The second part is that I would always recommend to use an agency as your strategic sound wall. So you should always really try to share with more SEOs and with other experts in the industry around what are your ideas, what are your theories. We are still in the world of figuring out how Google works, right? So I think that if you use your partners to have an external point of view that has no bias to what the brand is, to the actual product, it can be beneficial for your SEO strategy to be just perhaps more plural, perhaps more comprehensive.
And if you're working in-house as an SEO for a relatively larger organization, then there are probably multiple agencies being used by your company, perhaps that you're not even aware of, by different marketing departments as well. If you're intending to bring your SEO agency's activities in-house, then what other conversations do you need to have in-house with other marketing teams just to try and tie things up and be as efficient as possible?
That's a really good question. And I think that the most important would be around the transition period. How do you start reacquiring all the responsibility? Recently, I've had an experience in which we started to retake all the data and all the reporting around certain activities, and it definitely caused some tremors. So I think that staying in close touch around what are the internal capabilities of the team, who can help you out to walk around different challenges, particularly on the data. It would be quite important to understand if you do have the storage, for example. Do you have the actual software to analyze and to surface those data points as efficiently as an external partner? So that would be one of my flags there. The second part is obviously having an in-house team requires having more headcount and having more people in your team, which can develop into different managerial challenges, which can develop as well into people challenges. People would like to have a career. So always leaning on your HR team or any HR expert on how to design a career path for someone that is starting or for someone that is already a seasoned SEO. It is quite difficult because there are multiple paths where you can become a manager, you can become an expert in a specific area. And both of them are quite valid. It's just about understanding what do you need from people and then designing a path for that part. So my two flags would be a transition period, paying particular attention to data migrations and reacquiring measurement for your program. And the second one is around the hurdles that may come by having just simply more people within the team.
Yes, I was going to ask you about how this was likely to impact your team size and recruitment as well. So what trends are you seeing in general in terms of how difficult or how easy it is to recruit people and what people are looking for now to work within a company?
Definitely, those are really good questions. I think that the size of the team shouldn't really matter. I don't particularly like to pinpoint that specific numbers of people as long as certain areas of expertise are covered. So for me, a complete in-house team would always have data. People will always have dedicated people that understand numbers, that processes them, that are sufficient for the rest of the team. The second part is generally the website itself, like everything that you can tweak inside, content, performance, number of pages, tooling to actually get this done is quite important. And the last one is the tip of the sword, which for me is probably one of the most difficult areas to develop, where you have dedicated team members that can understand what is the next big opportunity for you and how to tackle it, perhaps in a more hacky way, if you will. And I think that, the size of the team, it should reflect the responsibilities that you have and understand as well what are the achievements that you're trying to do. In terms of what is attracting people to different teams, I think that right now providing precisely with learning opportunities up front is something really important. Something that I've seen that a lot of candidates are quite keen on. Expanding their knowledge base is something as well that I see people being attracted to. The market at the moment, from my experience, it's in a healthy way for companies, not necessarily for SEOs. There's definitely really, really good talent available at the moment, perhaps coming up from this trend on during the pandemic, where a lot of in-house teams were just really beefed up and started to become quite large. I think that now the industry is going to a more normalized period, if you will. So there's definitely really good talent available. And what I would advise everyone to attract the best talent is have a career plan. So everybody can be an expert and can arrive to a place already knowing a bunch of things. What really matters is, okay, well, how can we set up this person for the success in the next 5 years as well, and to keep them in-house? So definitely developing a career plan. And then the last one, being quite aware of the different necessities that people are bringing to the team, so it can become a plural and inclusive space. Sometimes technology tends to be not that inclusive, but I think that as we are moving on into a more diverse industry, it's quite important that the team culture reflects that.
You mentioned technology there. Just one other point that I wanted to touch on was automation. So going back to whether you're actually taking all the tasks from an SEO agency and taking them in-house, one appealing opportunity can be the use of new technology, maybe further use of AI or some other form of automation to try and make whatever the agency were doing for you more efficient. So what trends are you seeing in terms of automation, and what's your advice around this?
My advice would be to be cautious on automation. It's definitely a very tempting activity because, well, we want to make our jobs easier, right? And we want to make our jobs faster. But are we missing something in there? I was reflecting on my own career and how I started within SEO and becoming an expert into it. And it was mostly around grinding keywords and grinding spreadsheets with data numbers and trying to understand how does this correlate to the SERP and how are the changes becoming more tangible. The danger with automation is that some of the expertise developed through actually executing the work can be lost. So my advice would be try to automate the process. Don't automate the task itself. It would be a lot more challenging to rely on generative AI, for example, to write all of your emails. But what is going to happen when you go into presenting for a leadership team, when you go to a conference, when you're in one of these sessions where you can't really rely on a tool to give you all the answers at the moment. So I think that using automation, again, for the process itself to get all of your approvals, to gather everything within the same database, to make data transformations, that's all perfectly fine, I think, as long as you always have the ability to put your work into it, put your effort and your expertise into that output. That would be my advice.
If an SEO is struggling for time, what should they stop doing right now so they can spend more time doing what you suggest in 2024?
Stop looking at your rankings obsessively. I think that that's something very easy that we all have been there. We've all, especially right now that there's when there are updates, it's almost like an obsession to look at where am I ranking. The rankings are going to be there. I would always suggest to spend a lot less time observing something that is tangible, that is just there. And that way you'll have a little bit more time to move into creating your strategy, thinking about what is the best way to create helpful content and to distribute and distribute your product.
Luis Rodriguez is head of SEO at Compare the Market, and you can find him over at comparethemarket.com. Luis, thanks so much for being part of SEO in 2024.
Thank you, David.
I've been your host, David Bain. Get your copy of SEO in 2024, the book, over at SEOin2024.com.